South Africa's the Rainbow Nation, who just passed on yesterday at the age of 90, and tributes continue flowing in. More details on today's dailies, including the latest political intrigues happening in the country. I'm joined in studio by Muthiora Kariara, who's the party leader of TGN, and virtually joined by Suleiman Bashir from Mombasa, who's a lawyer. Gentlemen, thanks for your patience. Let's continue with the conversation, and right now let's talk politics, perhaps just mirroring from what was made in terms of statements that were made over the weekend. ANC party leader Musalia Mudavadi has welcomed and supported proposed amendments to the Political Parties Amendment Bill 2021 that seeks to allow candidates to run on either coalition party tickets or individual parties, among other provisions. Mudavadi has, however, said lack of clear provisions in the coalition agreements has always led to mistrust. The ANC leader spoke during the 41st Maragoli Cultural Festival in Vihiga County. Daniel Kariuki with that report.
The cultural diversity of the Maragoli community was showcased Sunday. Cultural dances and traditional artifacts displayed. This is Mbale in Vihiga County. The Maragoli community converged here to celebrate the community's rich cultural heritage. Among leaders present, ANC leader Musalia Mudavadi, Ford Kenya Moses Wetangula, among other Western leaders, the leaders taking a swipe at their opponents.
We should not allow anybody to think that anaweza kukupumia oxygen ya siasa.
Na wale ambao tumepigia kura na kusaidia, sasa badala ya kuja tusketi tuongee tutongozane, wanafikiri having failed to enter the Mlembe nation through the door, they will enter through the window and the roof. We tell them it will not work.
Jamaa walikuwa wametupangia ati Musalia either aende Azimio ama aende kwa Ruto. Lakini sisi wajumbe tukakaa na mheshimiwa Musalia, tukamwambia unapelekwa kwa kichinjio. Unapelekwa kwa kichinjio ndugu yangu.
But proposed amendments in the Political Parties Amendment Bill 2021 will take center stage. Musalia supporting the amendments.
Coalition building inasema ikiwa mko kwa coalition, community ya Western Province inapata nini kwa hiyo coalition? Tunaelewana? Sio kusema Musalia anapata kiti. Mimi nimekataa mara mbili kukuwa waziri katika serikali hapa Kenya. Kwa hivyo sio kusema mimi natafuta coalition because I simply want one seat.
Political parties coalition. That is a good idea because mnajua vile ANC, Wiper na Ford Kenya tumenyanyaswa na ODM. Sasa hiyo sheria inakuja is to define if you are in a coalition. What are your conditions and interests pre, during and after the formation of the coalition? Hiyo ni sawa.
Kama hawatakubali tupunguze kutoka miezi 6 period ya kudeposit coalition agreement to miezi 3, afadhali tupambane na hiyo kiti kufe.
The leaders have, however, dismissed a meeting scheduled on 31st of this month at the Bukungu Stadium, insisting they will not attend that meeting.
Siasa ya Waluya sasa sisi tumesema hatutaki brokers wa kukuja kuanza kugawanisha Waluya. Ati wanasema hiyo mkutano, kitu ambayo inaniuma sana, ati wanakuja walete Waluya wote, ati waseme Raila tosha tarehe 31.
We do not vote in Kenya on the basis of ethnic affiliation or ethnic identity. Kama wewe unaenda Kakamega kusema Waluya wanakuja kupanga nani atakuwa nani, nani atakuwa nani, umeacha wapi Wateso? Umeacha wapi Wasabauti wa Mount Elgon? Umeacha wapi Wakikuyu wanaoishi Western? Umeacha wapi kabila zingine?
If you thought that I am always predictable, I want to tell Kenyans that in the year 2022, I'm going to be extremely unpredictable.
Mchana Kakamega. Walitawaza nani?
A major announcement is expected during that meeting. Daniel Kariuki, KTN News.
Okay, so some political statements made during that festival right there, as you've had Oka, her family in the race. According to Wetangula just yesterday, mentioned that January is the D date or D month, whichever way you put it. That's when they'll name the flag bearer. And they mentioned, forget about the naysayers who think that Oka is moving too slowly. Good coalitions and good preparations for elections are never done in a hurry. So in one way or the other, they're holding strong, regardless of Mr. Odinga and his allies sort of pushing Oka to back his bid. And we saw Mr. Moi and Jirongo equally having attended the declaration by Mr. Odinga where he declared he would have a fifth stab at the presidency. Well, Muthiora, this is your forte. Let's talk politics. Well, what's he about Oka? Are they holding back?
First and foremost, I'm disappointed that Musalia Mudavadi, being the leader that he is, he says he's going to be very unpredictable. Being unpredictable is not a good quality for a leader. So as much as he's going through a lot, that's something I hope he's not going to be. Now, that said,
let me ask you on that still. Do you anticipate a three-horse race still? And what do you make of One Kenya Alliance?
Jesse, I'm running for president in 2022. It's unfortunate that the deputy president has been campaigning since the last general election, so clearly he's been ahead of the pack. Raila Odinga has been running for president since 1997. So it's just that they've been there. That's why they are front runners. But otherwise, there are other players in this race. Musalia Mudavadi is definitely a big player. So let's not talk about horses. Okay. Let's just talk about presidential candidates who mean well for this country.
Fair enough.
Yes, and so they are talking about coalitions, and this is important because we've seen how ODM treated its partners in the NASA coalition. Actually, this amendment to the law is going to help ODM because right now they are talking about accommodating all other parties. Yet, if we pause and reflect, we can see how they have treated other partners. So it will get to a point where people will ask themselves, wait a moment, we are getting into a coalition with this same ODM that treated the other parties the way that it did. So ODM needs to push this conversation forward and to make sure that it becomes law. And
is it just in the favor of ODM or across the divide, including TGN, your party? Are you somehow in support of these proposals to the Political Parties Act?
Whatever the other parties out there are selling is not core to what they really believe about what needs to be done for the Kenyan people. So we are not looking to get into a coalition with any of the parties out there. We have engaged in conversations before, and we even went as far as forming Muungano wa Wazalendo. And some people ran away with it. So clearly, politicians in Kenya are not honest about forging a way forward that delivers on whatever promises they make. So we have decided that we are going to go to the people and form a coalition with them. Now, I've spoken about ODM because the other side, UDA, they're talking about building a national party, and they are not talking about forming coalition with other parties, although they speak very negatively about other parties. They call them tribal, they call them regional, and all those things. The one party that is keen about partnerships and coalitions is ODM. So they need to make this law get to pass. Once that happens, then we will not hear about statements like you cannot force a giant to kneel so they can be the same height as dwarfs. So, Wetangula, Mudavadi, Gideon Moi, Kalonzo, let them get their act together, because we know the announcement that they are to make in January will depend very much on people sacrificing their political ambition, because they've all, the two, Musalia Mudavadi, Kalonzo Musyoka, have risen to the highest office except the presidency. So whoever sits ground, given the grandstanding we've seen, will be making a huge sacrifice.
All right, now that's well noted, Mudiora. Let's cross over to Bashir, who's still on the line with us. Bashir, and we saw intriguing debate on the floor of the House. Perhaps come Wednesday, we'll see such during the special sitting that has been convened this week. Let's talk about some of the proposals that elicited mixed reactions. Perhaps the timelines as to when political or coalition political parties should submit the agreement to the Register of Political Parties. It's been highlighted as 6 months. And we've had some members of parliament sort of contest that they want it amended to 90 days, most preferably, and equally a couple of other contentious issues that were deliberated on at the floor of the House. What stood out for you, even as we anticipate more debate come this Wednesday?
Thank you, Jesse. For me, let me put it this way. The concept behind the concept behind proposing the political parties amendment bill, I think was quite sound in my view. You see, it is trying to breathe into fresh life into our politics of coalitions. Over time, we have had various coalitions that the likes of, I think, NASA had formed previously. Let's say, for example, between ODM Kenya and ODM Kenya, which is presently Wiper. What has happened is, some of the principles ended up telling Kenyans that they were not treated well, that they were not given their share, that they were not equal, so forth, and all that. And I think those kind of stories. What this specific bill is trying to do at the moment is to reorganize the coalition part, the politics of coalitions and coalition of political parties. What it's doing is that it is giving an opportunity to the smaller parties, maybe with a view to protect the interest. It will equally protect the interest of the various political partners. To put it in very simple terms, this specific arrangement that is currently before Parliament will not only help ODM, but shall help every single political party. It may help UDA, it may help Amani, it will help any political party that seeks maybe to form a coalition with other parties. It will ensure that its interest is well catered for. At the moment, without this specific bill, what happens is that the various political parties sign a specific pact, inter se, amongst themselves. And that pact is normally maybe not heeded by by the other parties, by some of the partners and all that. So to solve this specific puzzle, this is a very important bill that shall breathe a proper life into the politics of coalition of parties. That is number one. Just the second thing that we need to look at is, when I look at the statement that came from the ANC leader yesterday, because he seems to be welcoming this specific bill that is before the House, I think is really telling us that, not looking at the One Kenya Alliance. One Kenya Alliance is comprised of various political outfits. Is it like he's giving us a signal that he shall be the leading political contender, maybe the presidential aspirant or something? Maybe. Is that why at this stage he is maybe supportive of the bill? I think politically it is sending a lot of signals, that specific statement from him. Finally, let me put it this way. Any single votes or any votes that the likes of Wetangula, of Ford Kenya and ANC leader Musalia Mudavadi shall get, in the event they do not team up with the former Prime Minister, the ODM leader, who is also one of the leading presidential aspirants in our country, at all times, if the likes of those who are forming the One Kenya Alliance end up in the ballot with their own presidential contender, those persons shall affect the vote basket of the former Prime Minister. That goes without a doubt. I think politically, it is very sound for the former Prime Minister to engage the One Kenya Alliance leaders to ensure that he has them by his side. That is so crucial to him. In the event they bolt out, they will affect his vote basket. Let me finally mention this, that when we look at the One Kenya leaders, they have failed in maybe giving the impression of being an alternative. That is now out of the window. They have not succeeded in giving Kenyans an alternative. Look at them again. The only people I think we can give proper credit to is the likes of Gideon Moi and maybe Kalonzo Musyoka to some extent. I assure you, I think in my considered opinion, in one way or another, if the likes of Wetangula maybe decide to maybe move on with their own specific coalition, the likes of Wetangula may not really affect the vote basket of the former Prime Minister. The former Prime Minister needs 3 persons from there. One is Gideon Moi, the second is Wiper Kenya leader, and the third one is ANC leader.
All right.
Those are the critical ones. The likes of Cyrus Jirongo and I think Wetangula may not be so crucial. But ultimately, this is a bill that will help my colleague there, my co-panelist, his party in the event decides to maybe form a coalition with other political parties. We are now trying to maybe mature our political party politics. It's a welcome thing.
Okay, Bashir, so you seem to be in support of the bill, that it might legislate some sort of sanity into our coalition and the formation of these coalition parties. Just briefly, Bashir, before I let you go, let's talk about the legality or illegality of this particular process. And just recently, we had some question the constitutionality in terms of the game is already ongoing and we're trying to change the rules of the game midway. Well, what say you about that? Will we see court cases arising right after this particular bill is set into law, if it will reach that point?
You see, Jesse, what the bill is basically, the procedure the bill is going through is the right procedure. The bill is subjected to Parliament, and that is the right way to amend the Political Parties Act. This is an amendment bill. The parliamentarians are exercising their legislative function, and I think, in my considered opinion, the procedure that they are now adopting with a view to maybe amending the Political Parties Act is quite sensible. No problem with the procedure. Any person can move a bill, amend the main act at any stage. This is a procedure this is a right on the part of the movers of this specific bill. There should be no question about whether or not it is the right time or not. They are exercising their right, and they are really following the rightful procedure, which is legislating this specific bill before the House. Just let me put it this way: in the event any specific person is not okay with the bill, he or she has a right to attend Parliament on that particular day, oppose the bill, cast a vote, throw it. Ensure that if it doesn't succeed, that is the procedure. That is the essence of democracy. It is the test of democracy.
Okay.
We need to appreciate that.
Okay, well noted, Bashir. Thanks for your take on that. Muthiora, as we finalize on our deliberations, perhaps do you find the timing suspicious?
Well, the timing is not suspicious. It just speaks to our
urgency,
way of doing things. Often we wait until it's almost too late to act. This should have been done some time ago, but the fact that it wasn't done and it's necessary, we need to get it done. I agree with the sentiments made by some of the speakers we just saw there yesterday, that the timing needs to be cut down to about 3 months. Because let's face it, in Kenya, the campaign period, like for the 2022 general elections, is supposed to start in May. So if you require that these instruments are deposited 6 months in advance, that's such a long time. There is so much that can change within that period. So I would agree, we need to lessen that to about 3 months. If anything, we've seen coalitions crafted very close to a general election. Tying that with the resignation of public or state officers, these rules are there to make sure that the race is level for all those that are participating in it.
Okay.
There are those, of course, that are introduced with a mischievous end in mind, but then I would urge that we have a sober debate. We need to tidy up and bring sanity to our politics. So these rules, these laws need to be re-examined further. Let that conversation go on, but by all means, let's not go into the 2022 general elections without a law that outlines how coalitions will work.
Well noted. Asante sana for your time. Muthiora Kariara, party leader TGN, waking up bright and early to sort of give us his input on some of the latest news making headlines. We appreciate your input right here. I hope you've been fully vaccinated, gentlemen. And Bashir, as I give you your final say, perhaps talk to us in terms of invoking the Health Act vis-a-vis the right of citizens to decide whether to get vaccinated or not. We know there's a court case ongoing. Which side of the divide do you fall on? Do you think the government is overstepping in terms of invoking the Health Act?
Absolutely not, Jesse. On 14th of December, Justice Anthony Brima of the High Court issued a conservative order that put a stop to what the state was actually determined to have, to ensure that maybe no Kenyan shall access basic services if he or she is not vaccinated. Yes, and I think that specific court order should be obeyed and respected by the state, so that no single Kenyan shall be forced that which he or she is not interested in. But yes, now, that is the court order at the moment. It is yet to be lifted. We respect that. Yes, I also want to point out two things. Number one, in a country like France, France, as of yesterday, has suffered more than 100,000 cases per day. I think for the third day, it has been recorded of 100,000 cases. So what France is doing, it has introduced something called the health pass, that no single person shall access basic services such as transport, catering services, access a hotel or a lodge without getting the booster jab. For them, it's not even about the vaccine. I mean, it's not just about the basic the two doses that we need. For them, they have actually gone a step further, that they're thinking of how to enforce the third one. And actually, Jesse, we need to also look at, there's a very, very big case that is before the US Supreme Court. It's called the COVID mandate case. So it is not just our country that the people have moved to court to challenge such a governmental directive, but for us as a people, it is about our choice. We can elect to go get a vaccine, be vaccinated or not. It is really important, for our health, but we should not be forced for as long as the court order is still in effect at the moment. Until Justice Anthony Brima's court is vacated, no single Kenyan should be forced to get vaccinated to access basic services. It's a choice, it is a right, and it cannot be forced upon someone's throat. That is it on my part.
Okay, well, the ministry has said they're not making it mandatory. They're just highlighting that in case you need in-person services, they have the right to protect those who are working in government offices and whatnot. But definitely it will form major conversations even as we cross into the new year, bearing in mind we've achieved a percentage of 14.4% in terms of those who are fully vaccinated right now in the country. Asante sana for your time. Suleiman Bashir joining us virtually in studio. Muthiora, we have run out of time.
I just wanted to say that our government must obey this particular court order that was given. Do not discriminate anyone on the basis of their vaccination status.
Okay, well noted. It's a choice, as you've mentioned, and has been mentioned time and time again. Let's see who will definitely take a step back in terms of this hardline stance. On one side, the government is tightening its stand, and on the other side, the law is definitely being interrogated through that particular court order. But anyway, that's a discussion for another day. Happy festivities, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time and your input right here on the show. Muthiora Kariara and Suleiman Bashir joining us right here on Morning Prime. Allow us to take a short break on that particular note. But of course, those are some of the major stories that have been covered in today's dailies. Make sure you grab yourself a copy, even as we anticipate the new year 2022. You're watching Morning Prime. We take a short break. We'll be back in a few. Stay with us.